such a diversity of groups now. Again, refugee professional game, she started that group up. I mean, I think that diversity allows us to here's how I get here. The diversity is really a great step for us to involve. And it's a usually we get involved in a way that
shows all these other groups because it's like, oh, I don't really want to get involved with this. Oh, but this one, this is perfect. Well, this is in my area, and so there's more of a.
That is a great point, and in fact, it was so Sonia. Does the City of Toronto have a listing of all the different community groups?
Yes, not an extensive listing, but on the back of the Toronto cycling map, there's a list of the major groups here. I'd like to say thank you to Albert for bringing attention to some of the lesser known groups that have recommended that we include on the list too. So this is a very good start. But if you haven't had a chance to pick up a map, please come back to the table here and please take a map and then you can view the list. And there's also contact information here for the general cycling pedestrian projects group, and then I can connect you with other groups as well too.
I'd actually like to invite Sonia up to the stage for our Q&A period. Sonia is from the Cycling and Pedestrian Projects Unit of the City of Toronto. The City Unit is responsible for the design and implementation of bikeways, multi-use trails, missing sidewalks, and various intersection improvement projects in Toronto that also promote cycling safety and education on the toronto.ca/cycling webpage and social media accounts, and produce the annual Toronto cycling map available today. So thank you. And so we're ready for the question and answer period, and I invite you to line up at the mic, and when it's your turn, you can state your name and who your question is directed to. So please keep your questions brief so we can try to get through as many as possible. Thank you.
It's okay if Hi, my name is Jason Flowerday, and I ride with Morning Glory and a few other groups. We're working on a couple of different task forces to try to improve some of these issues, but the group that we're sort of acting on behalf of is the recreational cyclist that's out on the road at 5:30 in the morning until 8, and traveling fast and insisting on you wear a helmet. What advice do you have for us to think about how we address the infrastructure issue? But it's it's a different. We're going out and riding 30, 60, and 90, 100K in the morning. What advice would you have for us on how to start thinking about solving some of those infrastructure safety problems that plague us as well?
So one of the things I'll just mention, so for people who don't know, the Morning Glory Cycling Club is a very large recreational cycling group, right? With a lot of heavy hitters, a lot of representation from the business world. I would say that given your group's composition and volume, that you really have an opportunity to start reaching out to the leaders in the companies that people work for, reaching out to your local representatives, and really saying this is not okay, right? So for example, I would say that a lot of your members are probably those that probably may have access to Premier Ford and his people. And so really harnessing that network to say, this isn't cool. And you're making, we side with these people here. This is how you can help us. And this is how it will build a vibrant economy, right? So one of the things we haven't touched on is the fact that bike lanes and getting people biking, it is part of tourism. It's part of increasing our economy, right? When we talk about how we deliver goods and services and people, increasingly we're seeing companies like Purolator and UPS invest in cargo bikes because they discovered, like everyone else, the fastest way to get around congested cities is on micromobility. So And then I would, reach out to Cycle Toronto if they need tips, or how, I'm sure some of you know Howard Cheng, who is an entrepreneur and business community. And I believe he may even be a member of the Morning Glories.
Thank you.
If I could, as a FedEx bike courier, every delivery a truck makes, I make 6. So it's 6 to 1.
And you're not blocking a bike lane or a contraflow lane.
No. So it's 6 to 1.
Wow.
I have a question about micromobility because we're talking about that a lot. It comes up a lot. And I think it actually goes back to Albert's first experience of imagining the bike lanes on Bloor Street. And I wonder if we're at a stage where we should be reimagining our infrastructure altogether, given that I think micromobility is going to become the most important form of transportation in urban areas. And just as a quick anecdote, I was in Vancouver and I rode a Lime scooter, which everyone is very opposed to. And I had a brilliant time on that Lime scooter because they had docking stations. So they had the infrastructure to dock the Lime scooter. They also had geo-fenced areas, so I wasn't allowed to ride through parks. I wasn't allowed to ride near schools. I was warned by a voice that I was approaching a sidewalk and I should stay off the sidewalks. And I thought, this is brilliant. Well, I'm 65 years old and I loved it because I could get somewhere in Vancouver faster than any other way, and I could get there without being sweaty, which is one reason why the e-bikes are popular. And I thought, this is so great for the next generation coming up who can't afford to buy cars. And so I'm thinking micromobility is really going to expand as much as we want to keep people active, and I'm a fitness coach, so that's one of my life goals too. But I wonder if there's any insight from the panel on directions that cities are taking globally in terms of managing from an infrastructure point of view. And just as a final comment, this comes back to your question about how do you manage poor behavior in cycle tracks. And I think a lot of that poor behavior comes from poor infrastructure for micromobility devices. I feel like we need a lane for people who are cycling, and we need a lane for micromobility that's going at a certain speed, and intentionality of delivering business goods and things like that. But then again, we are taking road space away from cars. So I just wonder if there's any conversation of this really dramatically changing the infrastructure that we're seeing in urban areas.
To everyone.
So one of the things, and that's a great question, and it's a great global concern. So one, cities around the world are grappling with this problem, right? So we tend to think about it's a problem here in Toronto, but New York, Paris, every major city. The big difference, I would say, in the North American landscape is, aside from the fact that we're now discovering that we don't have enough infrastructure space, something that Europe figured out ages ago, which has contributed to that culture of micromobility and just active transportation, right? I mean, I got to meet the new Consul General from the Royal Kingdom of Netherlands last week, and it represents the way it should be. So she's a professional bureaucrat. She bikes everywhere, as you would in the Netherlands, because it's normalized, right? She says the biggest thing that surprised her was the fact that how political biking is, right? She said, I mean, my gosh, people of all political stripes and cultures bike in the Netherlands. That is not anything that people have an issue with. And so I would posit that how cities need to grapple it is, one, tackling that culture. Because we are still behind the times by a good 60 years, because our leaders don't view the bicycle as a legitimate form of transportation. They may view it as, yeah, okay, I get it, it's for recreation. And I'll, strap your bike on the back of your car to drive somewhere to then bike. So I would say that is something that we need to tackle first in order for that to be rolled out. And so we need to have head offices of FedEx and UPS and other businesses really lobby and weigh in to the Toronto Region Board of Trade, about the importance of accommodating that shift. Because the industry, unfortunately, always has a good word with our leaders, and so it needs to come from these companies.
Yeah.
Well, that's the fight, is about space, right? So we've never, we've known since the 70s that the problem is we have too many cars, right? Because cars need a lot of space. So that's the fight, it's about space. On the one hand, walk, cycle, transit, and that's, as community bikeways, that's what we sort of are motivating reason for existing, is say we want the reallocation of space from cars to walk, cycle, transit. So that's the fight we're in right now. And what I've said, we're fighting the city of Fred Gardner because we want a different city. A lot of people want a different city, but it's a big fight. And I think the real danger right now is that we're being dragged down by the US to sort of, you know, to become a backwater when it comes to transportation or fossil fuels or climate action. And that's motivated by Trump, and Ford is really a Trump sort of disciple, but he's sort of repeating these failed approaches that have been failing since the 70s, that we're going to solve the transportation problem with more roads and more cars. We know it doesn't work, but that's not stopped people like Ford or Trump in the US from hoping it will this time.
In terms of future-proofing for changing micromobility, I want to say two things. First is that from what I've seen, recommendations are kind of converging on just making micromobility spaces like a cycle track wide enough to accommodate a variety of speeds. So to accommodate safe passing, to accommodate like wheeled scooters or things like that. The second thing is that when we build something like a cycle track, whatever we're building something that will last for some time, right? What we build is durable, and so we build our values into the infrastructure now, and that takes us into the future. So a friend from Copenhagen said something to me that I found very interesting, which is that, you know, in Copenhagen they have lots of cycle tracks, but by building cycle tracks next to a car lane, you're also building in the expectation that there will still be cars on that road in the future. And so I do keep in mind that we could be looking at a future where we want to build roads where there are no cars, right, or very few cars. And I think that's something we could imagine together, right? We could imagine spaces that are different even than the traditional cycle track and car lane that we have now.
I really want to hear what Sonia thinks. I can speak about this. I mean, all good points, and I agree. And like to build on what Madeline just said, we have updated our bikeway standards to make the standard cycle track wider. So it's now 2.1 meters for a standard cycle track, which will accommodate like a cargo bike, a large e-bike. So we are keeping that in mind as different types of micromobility are emerging in the market. I can speak about this from an educational perspective because I was involved in a recent educational campaign. So if you turn around and look at the two pillars at the back, there's a campaign that's targeted at people cycling, reminding them of what their rights and responsibilities are. And it's in response to many of the comments and concerns we received about micromobility users who are either on the sidewalk or not using the right type of vehicle or the permitted type of vehicle in our bikeways. So I'm not involved in infrastructure building. I can't really speak too much about it right now, but it is something that is on our radar and that we are keeping in mind as we continue to upgrade and build.
And maybe just add this micromobility thing. The cat is so far out of the bag. It's not going back in the bag. We have to just adapt to what's out there. Like, people are using their scooters that are technically illegal. Make them legal. Like, let's figure this out and make it work with wider infrastructure so that people can pass each other. I think it's very important. Like, we can't just keep clinging to 20 years ago. The future is now.
I just want to say something about, you know, before making a position on making scooters legal, that one of the things that is important to note is that scooter injuries are growing and are important. Like, our youth are going to sick kids more often with like traumatic injuries. 50% of the e-scooter injuries and deaths, they're wearing helmets, 50%. So the challenge with scooters and e-scooters is that regardless of where your helmet, like, a lot of the injuries are basically people getting stabbed from the handles. And again, because of a lack of regulation, the types of scooters being used are wildly different in weight and speed. And because they're quiet, they're really dangerous. And I can understand why the city, and I'm really thankful for the work that they've done putting together a micromobility strategy as opposed to just focusing on e-scooters. Because, you know, everybody, yeah, you try Lime or, you know, they want to try this new thing that's cool, it's easy, accessible. And another reason that they've grown in popularity in Toronto is because you can't bring a bloody bike on the TTC. So if you are working or commuting to a place that doesn't have bike share, and you want to help connect to the subway, the scooter is really the only thing that you can, or a folding bike that you can bring on the subway. So again, it involves taking a look at the system level that can be changed. And again, when we talk about human behavior, before we officially legalize something, it really is important to take a look at the whole area. And at the end of the day, bikes, your humble bike is legal and is part of the Highway Traffic Act. Completely inappropriate legislation because it treats people riding a bike the same as a vehicle on the road, right? And so it wants us to be treated the same way that somebody driving an SUV is. But we know that that's not equitable, it's not fair, and it's not safe. Which is why you'll often see, for example, a cyclist do a safe as yield stop at like a stop sign instead of coming to a complete stop, or taking the advanced pedestrian signal with the pedestrians so that they're seeing they're up front. But is it something that we should be, you know, ticketed for? No, the legislation needs to change.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hey, Vincent Lamb. I'm a commuter. I'm also a rider with Morning Glory, and I guess I'm thinking about my experiences with cycling advocacy, which have very much been as part of the crowd, and I've been to, sadly, too many ghost bike installations, as well as critical mass rides, and one of my children, Alexander Lamb, has been quite involved with some of these things. So they've constantly been kind of getting me out to things, which is great, but I'm just kind of in there in the crowd. So from that, I just have like one small suggestion. I know suggestions were not requested, but I'm going to make one. And then a question. And the small suggestion that I have for these kinds of mass events is that it would be really great if there was an explicitly social piece to it. And so as part of our group rides in Morning Glory, everyone comes for the riding, but stays for the coffee. Right, there's always a coffee with every ride. Great way to develop relationships and community. And for the organizers of these events, it wouldn't have to cost them anything to say, you know what, after this event, there's a designated spot where everyone can go for a coffee. And by involving and choosing business owners, it's also a way to very tangibly demonstrate, we are now bringing you, you know, whatever it is, 100 or 150 people who are going to buy a fancy coffee or a beer or what have you, right? So that's a way to build support in the community as well as build cross-linkages between people who attend the events. And then the question I have, which I guess does relate to cycling clubs, not just Morning Glory, but others, is would there be an interest in sort of explicitly reaching out to the memberships of those clubs for advocacy events? Because I think there are a lot of sympathetic ears, but I think your point is absolutely right, that there's a lot of people who kind of have a right brain, left brain thing. It's like, oh yeah, you know, I go and I ride my bike and, you know, get in my tempo training, my threshold training, my zone 2, my zone 4, etc. And then I go off and do whatever else, and there's kind of like, oh right, there's infrastructure, even though lots of those people also commute. So, you know, I wonder, I've never really seen a real explicit kind of reaching out between the advocacy community and the cycling clubs, but I wonder if that's a potential source of strength.
So I'm just going to quickly answer part of that. I believe there has been on certain levels, but for example, and one of the things, I agree with you. So, and advocacy has all sorts of different forms, right? So one of my preferred forms of advocacy and why I founded Found and Friends is really to help build a culture of support and bring women and non-traditional cyclists into the fold, right? By creating events that they're pure recreational rides that begin in a park, end in a park, and there's always like, there's arts and crafts for the kids, there's a picnic element, right? So, and again, you don't have to wear lycra, you're wearing clothes, it can be joyful, we have music, we have bubbles. That said, and for the cycling community, and again, we're all different people, but I started riding with the Friends for Life bike rally, and that's one of the things where I for the first time, I was shocked for the first training ride. I showed up at Victoria Park in Danforth. You know, I rode there or took the subway, and I discovered that one of my team captains, who lives like a 5-minute walk from me, drove. Right, and that was the first time, like, all of these cyclists, it's like, what do you mean you, like, why would you drive here? Like, and again, but through talking to people, right? So people knowing that at the time I was working for Cycle Toronto, I'm the vice mayor of Toronto, that advocacy begins by talking to people and explaining differences, because on the ride, again, people have certain perceptions, and their view is, you know, we're biking for the speed, etc. And so we're trying to open that up. And showing that there's more than one way to bike for different needs. Like it may work for you biking on Bayview along the traffic lanes, but you know, I'm not going to be comfortable doing that.
A great suggestion. Good advocacy has a social element to it. We meet every couple of weeks in Etobicoke. We call it Coffee on the Kingsway. So the social aspect is really important. Historically, there's been a division between sort of recreation sport riding and utilitarian riding, because for a long time people didn't want to be associated with utilitarian riding. In other words, they'd be happy to say, I'm a sports cyclist, right? And they'd ride around, but they wouldn't ride to work, because that's different, that's lower class. So for a long time, and it was based on class sort of distinctions, that's why you don't see a lot of interaction between utilitarian riding and sport riding. You see some cross overlap now, and you'll see a sport rider on the expensive bike and then riding to work, right? But for a long time, there was a division between those. So I absolutely say, yeah, I mean, advocacy for sure. If you're doing it, then that's great, and you should be doing, I would say, more of it, but do it explicitly, because I know historically, I mean, you ride, right? But get involved in the advocacy, it sounds like you are. And I think then that reaching out to existing groups, that's great as well. So, absolutely.
And I just don't know, who do I approach in Morning Glory?
Fraser
Like, how do I access
Fraser Chapman.
Fraser Chapman? Okay, because like I would warmly invite every member to the World Day Remembers Tomorrow, because I believe you guys lost Blanzo Top. Yeah.
A lot of these groups have websites, they have contact information, they have insurance. I mean, they've invested in their own communities, they're easy to contact.
But I believe there is a coalition of recreational cycling groups that are doing advocacy, especially around Hyde Park, right, and trying to get this.
I think there's 3 issues that are being worked on. Infrastructure is one of them, and there's 2 other issues. I forget, like you might know what they are. But yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Let's move on to the next question. Oh, sorry.
Hi, just some words of encouragement, first of all, because Alison, you mentioned the Netherlands, and if you do a Google search on what Amsterdam looked like in the 70s, it's absolutely infested with cars. And to get to these utopias, your Copenhagen, your Amsterdams, and so on, it was driven by advocacy, and unfortunately, here we are. So through that, and thank you, Bill 212 and Doug Ford. I'm recently joined an East End advocacy group. We just launched a site, and you're welcome to join that mailing list. And you can find our website over there too. So we talked a bit about traffic calming, right? And we lost our speed cameras. We lost, and Doug Ford, I think, announced a $200 million investment in now new safety, as you call it. Well, bike lanes are traffic calming, right? So we had Bill 212. Now there's Bill 60, and there's feedback to that bill that further encroaches on municipalities applying their infrastructure. So just a reminder for everyone, you can give feedback on that by November 22nd, which I believe that's Friday. And then if you'd like to join our mailing list, I really appreciate all the feedback. Is there anything more that we can do to speak out about some of these bills in the legislature that is coming out, not unfortunately helping us out, but deterring all this movement?
Yeah, if I can make a quick comment. I mean, sure, right now, I mean, there's a lot of angst over, Bill 60 and Bill 212 and so on. I mean, I think as advocates, what we need to do is to say, well, what can we get done, right? So I gave the one example. We got our first protected bike lane during Rob forcing, but what can we do? Well, for number one, connections, right? Right now, a lot of the cycling infrastructure is not connected. We can do that partly on side streets through parks and so on. Get it connected. Number two, the trail system. We can start building up the trail system. That's what we did when Rob Ford was the mayor, right? The trail system was built out. Start building those alliances. Start working with the opposition parties, right? Get these things into their platform. I've always thought education in schools, that's an obvious one, right? Talk to the opposition parties. So I don't think we should sort of feel, and I think Sonia told me this, don't be demoralized, right? I mean, think about, I think right now we need to be creative. What are the things we can get done in spite of a majority Ford government? And he's obviously intent on celebrating a certain way of life and a certain way of getting around. But let's not be discouraged and think we're just going to be angry for the next 3.5 years. Let's figure out what things we can do and what things we can do together to make the city safer for walk, cycle, transit, because that's what we're fighting for.
Yeah, I do think that we could have a bigger presence, both digitally and in person. And again, if you want to join the mailing list, you can check out the website.
Yeah, very good.
Next, please.
Hi, I'm Peter. I've been cycling for, 60 years. Currently live near Danforth. Just one comment before you get my question. I was driving, I admit I was in a car, but I was driving along Queen Street and there was a guy on an e-bike ahead of me and he got his front wheel pinched in the streetcar tracks. And we have streetcars in Toronto. We'll probably have streetcars in Toronto for a long time. And we'll have tracks that will support them. These e-bikes are banned or illegal in Toronto. One of the reasons are streetcar tracks. What happened with this guy, he pinched his tire, he went head over heels, and I almost drove over him. So when you're following somebody that's riding an e-bike, e-scooter I mean, sorry about that, e-scooter, they have small wheels, they can go down on tracks, they can go down on potholes.
And vibrations.
You
cracks and crevices.
You have to stay well back of them if you're driving, because they may go down. Luckily, he got up, walked away. My question is, with regard to situations like the bike lanes along Danforth, at the traffic lights, during busy times when there's a lot of pedestrians and a lot of cyclists or people on whatever going down the bike lane, at the traffic lights, we have cars that want to turn right. And right now, they're in conflict with not only the pedestrians, but also the cyclists. And I was wondering if the city would ever consider having like a 3-phase light system where there would be the red light would be obviously red, but the green light would be divided into 2 phases. One for pedestrians and cyclists only, and the second portion of the green phase for cars only, where the people are held back and the cyclists are held back and the cars can move forward or left or right as they do. I know the parade light intersections that were trialed downtown were an utter failure, but this would be a simpler way to separate bikes from cars at this critical point of intersections with traffic lights. Would the city ever consider that? Say something.
There's like Thank you for your question.
Queue for Parkside.
Sorry, so we do have this at some intersections. The one I'm thinking of is Avenue Davenport, one of them. So it's a phased approach. These cyclists will get a green light, pedestrians as well, so they'll be able to move forward. And then cars that are motorists that are turning right will have a green light, and then everyone else is stopped. So we do have that in certain intersections in the city. If you are requesting something along the Danforth, that would require a more in-depth study. So that would be looked at by our traffic signal operations group. I would encourage you to email 311, or if you want to email me directly at cyclingtoronto.ca, I can probably put you in touch with somebody or get that escalated a little bit more. But it is a very good suggestion. And what you've also described, leading pedestrian and leading bicycle intervals. So another intersection I'm thinking of is at Lakeshore and Bay, where people on bikes and pedestrians are moving at the same time. Eventually, I think that we would like to install more of these type of signals throughout the city. But it's an excellent suggestion, and it's not, we've heard this before too, so thank you very much.
I just wanted to add to that, in many parts of the world, that is how it's done kind of by default. Like, you would not have a situation where cars and pedestrians have the right to the same space at the same time. And, I would love to see that more here. We also have options like limiting turning at all, so we don't have to allow cars to turn at every road that they could possibly turn, right? And that would also reduce some of the conflicts at many side streets and things like that. So, we have options. We could do these things.
I just want to add that, in, like on Bloor West, now they've put all those purple to push the cars out, so they have to turn more slowly, so that's a help. But really, the bike lanes have been blamed for so much traffic there, when it's no. At every subway station, hundreds of people are trying to cross the road. It's the pedestrians, and there's one lane, and so the car can't turn right, and they're holding up the entire line of traffic because they cannot turn because of pedestrians, not because of bicycles. So,
right, and we could have a car circulation plan that would take into account that cars don't need to turn everywhere.
I like this idea. It's very good.
Any other questions? Yep, please.
Hi, my name is Brian. I appreciate you offering this session and sharing your insight and perspectives. Just curious if any of you could comment in terms of how Toronto compares to other similar sized cities in terms of cycling infrastructure.
Yeah, well, my wife and I just came back from Montreal. It's amazing. It's like here we see a nice protected bike lane. You feel like celebrating. But in Montreal, it's like every third street. So Montreal is, a much smaller city than Toronto, has doubled our infrastructure. They add 30 kilometers a year of bike lanes, or they have over the last decade, 30 kilometers per year. So it used to be, as advocates, we'd say, wow, look at it, Copenhagen and Amsterdam. But now we just need to say, look at it, Montreal. And the other thing that they have is fantastic is the trail system that leads out of Montreal. They have what they call Les Routes Vertes, and it's an amazing system across the province, whereas in Toronto, I think we still can't get out of the city on a safe route. So we don't need to look at Amsterdam and Copenhagen anymore. Montreal is a great example of what you can do if you want to, and Toronto's catching up, but we have a bit more to do.
Just a couple things. Has Montreal done anything unique when it comes to communicating all of this change? It strikes me that over the last decade, I ride in the morning, I commute, I ride on the weekends, I have kids that ride. No, the city has grown tremendously. And what I haven't seen is a lot of messaging about the Highway Transportation Act, where bikes are covered and acknowledged, or any other information that might lead to how do we coexist on these roads together as we go through this transition. I know, Eleanor McMahon has been trying to do some advocacy work through Share the Road. Excuse me, great name. Really, we've asked all these different stakeholders, from pedestrians to cyclists to drivers, to come together and very quickly coexist. And in my opinion, people don't know what the laws are under the Highway and Transportation Act. They don't understand what some best practices are. Like, you know, I've been doored 3 times because someone comes out between a car and opens up a door. That's against the law under the Highway and Transportation Act. And when I, said, you can't do that, I can't do what? So the point is, there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of messaging, there's a lack of education, which I've heard all of you say today. And there's all of these advocacy groups, and I applaud your efforts. But where are we asking people, as this population grows, new bike lanes get rolled out, new lights get tested, all of that kind of thing. Here's the changes that we're making. Here are the laws. Here's some best practices on how you can coexist as we grow together, right? It doesn't exist out there. Simply maybe putting something, a couple of bullet points on a provincial or a city website, expecting people will take the initiative and go there, does not cut it. So maybe you can speak to what Montreal has done differently. I go there a lot. We have family there. They have as much angst as they do. They're doing a great job, but they have as much angst, between the drivers and the pedestrians and then all of this kind of stuff, right? So that's one of the comments for today. And the last thing is if you could just elaborate on where is that initiative, that proposal that it's at the province right now, that you referenced a little earlier, around, it's not as much policing as much as it is licensing potentially of our Uber Eats delivery guys and all of those other, they're not vehicles, but these other, users of the road, commercial users of the road. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, on where that is standing right now?
But I think let's go back to your first question about how has Montreal been able to advance.
I'm just interested in messaging and communications.
Well, but it starts with leadership. So Montreal and Paris are 2 cities that have really advanced their cycling infrastructure over the past 5 years. And really the leadership of both mayors, both women, that really set a tone to advance these things, even faced with the usual backlog. I mean, if you listen to the same things at City Council at Montreal, you'd hear the same kind of people that we hear in Toronto pushing back against pedestrianizing their streets or adding bike lanes. But the difference is really that leadership.
And I just wanted to say, I learned the rules of the road almost 20 years ago when I took my driving test at 16, right? And I have not, changes since then have not been mandated that I learned them, right? I'm still allowed to drive. So I'm not necessarily saying that we should change our licensing system, but in terms of a way to learn updated rules, I don't know that there is a channel where we are required to learn those changes, right?
I would go and say we should change our licensing system. I'll say that. Do airplane pilots take one test on the road and then never are tested again until they turn freaking 80? No. So why do we let people in cars get away with not ever updating or demonstrating their competence to have a multi-ton, extremely dangerous machine that they're operating on a street? So I would love to see more frequent retesting, and to test at that point on the changes. So if you, do you know what it means when there's a solid double line beside a cycle track? Can you use the cycle track as a turn lane or not? You can't.
Yeah, but we have a system in place. We have some laws in place. The Highway and Transportation Act, managed by the Ministry of Transportation, oversees that. They may not be the best or even come closer, but we have something in place. But I don't know if there's any recent data on this survey work, but if you poll drivers and ask them what the responsibility, what the laws are in terms of how they come and go from their cars, or you ask cycling clubs for the most part, and I ask the guys I ride with all the time, about the laws versus some best practices. Well, we try to promote the best practices, right? But anyways, if you ask people what the laws are, I suspect that most stakeholders, a majority of the stakeholders, from pedestrians to cyclists and drivers, whatever, do not understand. So we have some, but there's no education, is what I'm saying.
Right, and I think, like Jess is saying, the onus is on the operator of the most dangerous machine in this case to know those rules, right? I don't think pedestrians are often children, right? They don't need to know the rules. They should just be safe by
I'm a
default.
driver. No one has told me. I've never read, and I take the time to learn this. Where do I go to find out how I make a right-hand turn over a bike lane? What is my right of way?
Bike map.
What is my right of way?
It's on the bike pack. But I would say, I mean, just specifically, number one, and we've mentioned this, to put cycling education in the curriculum. Because kids would love it. Number two, even if you never ride a bike, you'll understand the rules and appreciate cyclists. Number three, it would make it more a legitimate form of transportation, just a legitimate part of our transportation system. We don't have that now. So the other thing, specific in your question, you asked about licensing. Well, the city does not have the authority to regulate, license the food delivery companies. They've asked the province for that authority. The province has ignored them. Number two, you asked about, other regulation. I contacted the Minister of Transportation about where they are with the e-bike regulation. It took them a month just to answer my query and to say, we're not doing anything right now, or it is sort of up in the air. But that's a big problem, so specifically on that. But cycling education, I think kids would love it, and teachers would love to teach it, I'm sure, and it would increase legitimacy. And even if you never ride a bike, you'll at least know what the rules are, and that would be great. I'll leave it at that.
We've actually reached 4 o'clock, so this concludes the formal portion of our gathering today. I'm sorry we didn't get to everything. Okay, one more question.
Well, basically I want to shout out a couple of, to Toronto Public Library for holding this, which is great. And also to Cycle Toronto. I've been a member of Cycle Toronto for years, and I have two things. One is I point out that there are local, Cycle Toronto is this organization citywide that does policy work and, gets involved with the city and with Doug Ford and so on. But there's also local groups, like in Ward 15, Don Valley West, Don Valley East, Ward 16, there's a local group, Don Valley Midtown. So, and their role is all advocacy. It's not jolly fun rides. People like Albert do the nice fun rides, but Cycle Toronto do the hard stuff. So the other thing about Cycle Toronto is they've been really active in protecting the bike lanes, the Bloor, the Young, that were going to be ripped out. They were going to be ripped out. They would have been gone by now, except that Cycle Toronto appealed, and you've got to thank Michael Longfield. Is it his name?
Yes.
Yeah. Mark Longfield for his advocacy there, and of course there was money required, there was fundraising required, but they actually won they won that appeal. And it threw Ford off his rocker. What am I going to do? Well, he's now appealing it again at a higher court, and we'll see. But I think they'll be looking for money again, right, to carry the thing. And I'm not sure. Maybe Albert or Alison know whether the city is going to be involved in that further appeal.
Well, EcoJustice and Pallier Roland
yes.
are the firms.
EcoJustice, yes.
I used to work at EcoJustice.
Yes.
They're the firms representing Cycle Toronto. So, EcoJustice provides pro bono legal services.
Yeah, which required money. And yeah.
Well, through EcoJustice has funding, yes.
Anyway, so this thing isn't just sort of nice to know stuff. It gets pretty critical when you're in court, right? It's pretty serious, and shout out to those organizations for the work that they're doing on a daily basis.
So I'd like to thank our panelists and Sonia and your audience for participating and contributing to today's discussion. I'd also like to thank the Toronto Public Library staff that supported me. Welcome to you to join us at S. Walter Stewart again for our future programs. You can see what's scheduled by the by the door there. We've got the November adult calendar and the December adult calendar available. And if you're interested, I'd like to make a special plug for another panel program happening Saturday, November 29th, that's Saturday, November 29th from 2 to 4 again on coexisting with coyotes. Lastly, we appreciate your honest feedback to fine-tune our future programs, including Civic Life ones and others, by having you complete an evaluation form before you leave today. And as you've heard, there are many approaches to address the concern of safe cycling in the city and to get involved. And I wish we had more time for so many more questions, but I wish for you all to have your, let me try this again. I wish for all your cycling experiences to be safe ones. So thank you.